Live? Hello. Stuff's on a different side now.
It is. I thought, what do you prefer? Chat on that side or the other side?
Well, I think in line with the camera's better, right? That was your whole idea initially.
Oh, because you know what?
To keep me looking.
It's reverse on that side, isn't it? There we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hello. How are we doing? Chris is always breaking things, yes. What's going on, everybody? Hello. How is the week going? It is, I think, Thursday. Is today Thursday? I feel like today's Thursday. It's one of those weeks where I have no idea, to be honest with you. So today is today. And I hope that today is going well for you. It's going pretty well around here. There's just lots going on. So I hope everybody is having a wonderful today.
Oh, here's a question from Law Dog right out the gate. Question from Law Dog. How'd you come up with the name Monument Hobbies? Anyway.
It was legitimately us just hanging out, talking about possibilities. What could the possible names for our company be? We were Slow Fuse Gaming, and that did not fit the trajectory we were on with the quality of products we were wanting to make and such, so we needed something better. And we just kind of all sat down one time. There were some other partners involved at the time, and we sat down and thought about, okay, what really exemplifies what we do? And I really liked the name Monolith. We tell it because I'm a big 2001 fan, and I just had this image of the big monolith, in my head as a logo. I tend to think of things graphically, right? And so, like, what would be really cool as a logo? And but of course, Monolith Games at the time was, I think they're a video game maker, but so though was not a possibility of getting everything that we wanted in that name. So we went with Monument. It turns out, for no reason of our own, no, just kind of by accident, that like Monument State is kind of an Arizona thing, right? Because of the Grand Canyon, and there's like Monument everything in Arizona. So it just kind of stuck.
Here's a question from B-Town. How would you do armor glowing red from the inside? Sort of like a fire demon wearing plate armor.
From like a technical aspect, I think that underpainting all of that would be really good, rather than trying to go in and do like the joints of the armor after the fact, because you could, go in and do the armor joints after the fact and make the glow happen and all that, but that's going to be excessively hard to do and to pull off without getting paint all over everything else. But you could paint like the recesses of the armor, your flame reds, and then paint the armor around the recesses and get a good look. Anytime you're doing something that is illuminated from the inside, you have to kind of train your brain to think that you're going to have to move away from your standard shadows and highlights, where shadows are in the tight areas, because what's happening is that the bright, warm glow of the fire in between the armor plates is what's in the shadows. And so you just kind of have to flip everything upside down. Start there, obviously, and then just kind of go with it. See what you like. The technique is up to you and what you feel comfortable with. I think that doing it first is probably better, like painting the flame glow first, like we said, rather than trying to sneak it in after you've painted the armor color, is your best bet.
Derpstick, sorry you're having to deal with those fires. That's crazy.
Derp, are you out there?
Yeah, staying in a hotel right now.
Sorry, man. There's nothing we can even say. It's absolutely insane what we're seeing.
Yeah, stay
from
safe,
the Palisades and everything.
It's crazy. It's
Chris has got a bunch of ex-coworkers out there when he was in the film industry and all that. So
definitely,
we are all
family too. Yeah, it is. We're definitely thinking about everyone over there. That's for sure.
Arizona just sent a huge amount of firefighters and equipment out to help. So hopefully they can start getting some control. As of the last time I've seen, there's zero containment of the Palisades fire. So that's no joke what's happening that way. Sorry it's affecting you. Anybody that's got yourself, friends, family out there, please stay safe.
Yeah. We're continuing with the black armor today. Jason, what are we how are we continuing with this today?
I am glazing, starting where we left off. I'm using white blue with a little bit of Payne's gray as I go, and just kind of sketching with a thin glaze consistency of paint, sketching in my bright spots, you know, so I've got to figure out where the shine would be for the shape of the armor and such. So I'm just going to put the shine spots in. On the chest, it would be at these kind of upper level areas. And doing the standard how to NMM, as it were. The way that I attack it is to just kind of block in very sketchy style where my shine will be. So right now, if you remember, if you were here for yesterday's show, you'll notice that we did the darker Payne's gray stuff first. Then we started adding in little bits of white blue. It's just two colors, Payne's gray, white blue. We start adding in little bits of white blue as we go to get a little bit brighter color, a little bit brighter color, a little bit brighter colors. We started here with a little bit of a, you know, dark gray bluish kind of color coming out of the Payne's gray, then here, and then now we're at that point where pretty soon we'll be using pure white blue for the highlight. But I need to get all of this sketched in, right? So like that shine right there is a little tight, so I probably want to extend it to where my glow is a little bit broader across the top of this shoulder because the shoulder's so big. I don't want it to be so mirror-like. If your bright shine is in a really small pinpoint position, might make it seem like it's too polished. You know, you can think in terms of, you know, I always try to think of what nerds can recognize, and Darth Vader is one of the ones where his helmet was so polished that you could see the round lights from the ceiling as round, bright circles in the black. That's highly polished, like glass black, you know, polished armor. That's not what I'm trying to create. So the more tight you bring your highlights, the more they become pinpoint sources of light, like they're reflecting the tube in the background or whatever, or the round circle of the sun. That would be a more polished shine. I'm looking for a broader, less polished, battle damage kind of a scenario going on here. So I'm hunting around the model with this sketch type style to find those highlight shapes.
Painting. All right. This is from Colonel. Painting vampire skin, trying your stripe technique. Would you use royal purple for the chin and eye area? What would you use for the highlight of the forehead to give it a more dead skin look?
I still like bright yellow green because it looks sickly.
It's one of my favorite colors.
Right? Bright yellow green, you let more of it show, right? Like here, it just gives a warmth to the skin tone. It makes the skin a lot more yellowy, brown, tan kind of a feel. But you can imagine if I'd used a paler color of skin, like tan flesh or something, and glazed it over with a bright yellow green, it would still be more jaundiced green. It would make it look like he's got like liver failure or something, which is what undead would have, right? Stuff's not working right. So just let more of the yellow-green show out from underneath a paler skin tone like tan flesh, right? Or bright shadow flesh, something like that. That'd be my big recommendation.
Just that in our past VODs, you could probably go look at some of that Usharan VODs. Those are
the
really
Usharan
cool,
one is a good one.
really good workup for that kind of skin. Mo, welcome in everybody. We're just picking up with the bust, continuing the black armor from several days ago. So if you're just tuning in, welcome in.
This is the legally distinct Tiger L. Anthony.
That's right.
From the wonderful space opera.
Space opera
called Battle Driver 25,000. Fantastic series wherein a mother loses her children in a space age parking lot
A space age parking lot.
And then has to fight back across the galaxy to get them from their abductors. And then go on a sort of crusade, if you will, across the stars to prevent other families from having to suffer the same woes of losing their children from having been abducted by negligent parents in the parking lots of the grocery stores of the future. So,
and that is the story of Tiger L. Johnson.
That is the story of where Tiger
Yes,
L. Anthony
no
started.
problem, Colonel. We're definitely go check that. Just go definitely, if you got some time, check those other VODs out. It's really cool.
Right now I'm just glazing with Payne's Gray and white blue to find my shine on the armor.
Capt Beardy, painting some haunted forest Sylvaneth, was curious if you had a short list of paints you'd recommend for black hair.
Yeah, believe it or not, the colors I'm using right now are great. Payne's Gray and white blue to develop the shine and then do black wash over the top of them. You're going to see me do a lot of that technique on this armor that would also work very well for hair or any other material. So stay tuned, because that's exactly what I'm doing, is finding my way to black armor through a very deep bluish gray that will give me a better undertone for visual black than just trying to paint in black and grays. Black and grays tend to be very boring. They don't look like true black in a lot of cases, but it depends on the material that you're trying to paint too. So,
Goopster's asking, any update on the sprays for Canada?
No, currently not. Unfortunately, with the new year, we had to put a lot of things on hold. We've got LVO coming up with shows and stuff. So as soon as we have more time, we'll be breaking back in with our Canadian distributor and figuring out what we need to do for hazmat. It should be fairly simple. It just takes time. The distributor has to be prepared to bring the stuff in and have a place to store it. So all of that planning is going on now, trying to figure out how to make it all work. But I hope that before too long into the quarter here, we have a good answer for you and can set up some retail stores up in your area so you can get them.
Great. Yep, no problem, Goopster. Michael Paints Minis did a big order this morning. Looking forward to completing the line with this order. Especially looking forward to seeing how the metallics, the fluorescence, and the transparents look.
Nice.
Yeah, I've actually just been using bright yellow green and fluorescent green with a little bit of water in my airbrush for like a underglow for all of my undead. Really liking that one.
That's a good way to use it.
Yeah, my Nagash is all glowy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he's summoning everything. I'm like, I got to try to, like, how are they coming out of the ground? So I tried that, and I actually just really like it.
Nice.
The fluorescent green is a great color. Really liking that workup.
Yeah, I'm going in with a very thin glaze of the two mixed, so it's kind of a mid-tone, not too bright, not too dark, and glazing that in there to kind of now start my blends before I go in and hit it with the real bright highlight. So you can see I'm working in this it's still a dull, like Space Wolves gray, actually, you know?
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is I'm running it super, super thin so that as I bring it here, I'm being able to start deeper in my shadow with it. So my brush touches down here, even where I have that dark purple, and pull it back up through all of those mid-tone colors. And that starts to build a blend. This is the power of glazing to kind of correct the sketchiness. I say correct, just to kind of finalize and start pulling the sketchiness that I've painted this whole thing with into focus, if you will.
Yeah.
Right, and it'll kind of start to blur things a little bit more. And I'll just do that a couple layers. I'll wait for the previous wet layer on that forearm piece dry, and then come back and hit it again. Again, when I'm working this wet, you got to be very careful not to overwork the area. I'm using a number 6 brush, so it's going to hold a lot of water, and just means you got to be careful with how you over moisturize.
So, James Eaton on fluorescence, is blue just tough to add to that pop to?
Well, fluorescing is a chemical reaction, believe it or not, right? And the blue pigment, there just isn't a good one that does the chemical reaction in a way that's right. When it is submitted to UV, it actually fluoresces, which means it creates its own frequency of light that it isn't really, right? So I would urge you to go look up the science behind fluorescing. And blue as a frequency of light, it just doesn't fluoresce the same. So it makes it very difficult to to do a blue that works the way the others do. And because we didn't design the fluorescents with the idea of them being glow in the dark as the primary component, what we wanted them to do was be really, really bright colors that you could use for OSL and such. And so I was not happy with the fact that the blue didn't look as good as our current blues, like sky blue and transparent blue over white would. So it didn't make sense for us to just kind of throw it out there. Doesn't mean it might never come out, but it's just fighting an uphill battle for something I don't care so much about.
This is a good question from Kingtone. How do you decide what color to glaze with as far as midtone/highlight colors?
Well, in this case, I'm glazing with the midtone because what I'm trying to do is pull the shadow colors and the highlight together before I put the really bright stuff on there. So I find myself glazing with midtones more than anything else, I guess is the way to put it, because they will then pull everything to a center point. Think about how you balance a weight. You've got a light weight on one side, a heavy weight on the other side. How do you balance those two? You can't add a heavy weight to the light side, right? And you sure can't add a light weight to the heavy side. But if you balance it by adding a medium weight to the light side, right, then you'll find your balance point. And so that's what I'm doing. Consider the colors as having weight. And the highlight is generally going to be in a much smaller area than the darkness. So I'm coming in with a mid-tone and spreading it throughout the rest of the armor plate to bring those together and balance that little bitty spot of brightness in with all of the big sea of darkness around it. Not the best analogy, but I think it works.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I find myself glazing with midtones more and more as I'm doing this portion of the work. And this is all just water on my brush, so.
Welcome in, everybody. If you're joining us, we're continuing on the black armor. Make sure you guys tag us, and I'll see your questions. Tech Elf, Zombie, Wad, welcome in.
Now I'll start going back again with just white blue. We did a little bit of this at the end of the day yesterday.
You said white blue?
White blue, yeah. Now that we've glazed over it, it will have darkened that white blue a little bit. So now by adding the white blue back in, I'm going to get that really big, heavy punch of shine one more time. On the cylinder of an arm, you just want to find that line, so to speak, of where your shine is going to run down the length of the arm. And I'm just going to start sketching that in.
Zazen's asking, how shiny are you going to make the armor? I guess, yeah. How do you base your shine levels when you're doing this technique?
I mean, the model speaks a lot of it. How battle worn do you want it to be? I don't consider Space Marines to have like high polished armor. I don't ever paint them that way. For battle dress, I can imagine that they might do that, but I'm not talking about fresh off the line guy. I'm talking about the lion after he's beaten some skulls in, is more my style of painting.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have a shine that makes it look like it has been taken care of over its years, but in today's world, it's been in some action, right? He is not taking a break. This is fighting armor. So we'll do it like that. So my shine won't be completely mirrored, but you can see I'm going pretty bright with the highlight. And you can see how doing that initial blend now starts making that look a lot smoother.
Yeah. You typically do your weathering at the, I guess this is kind of a naive way to say it, at the end, right?
It's not naive at all. Yeah. I paint things. I use a lot of texture on bigger models like this. So a lot of the texture is already baked in. If you want to punch in, we'll show kind of the...
there's that 500 for you. Oh, look at that, chat. There
right?
you go.
So you can see how my brush strokes, I'm using them to give a texture that acts as a weathering. If you look at this, each time I'm going in and doing my bright shine spot, right? I'm going in and adding a line and then a bunch of really small lines that give it not a scratched look because they're all symmetrical, so to speak, but it means that there is a texture. You can imagine had you run a piece of sandpaper across that armor, it would leave those kind of little nicks in it. So rather than blending this line into one smooth transition, I like having these little textures. So that is weathering along the way. What happens is that, yes, at this stage here pretty soon, I'll start adding in like scratch marks and things too. And that will then help solidify the level of weathering that I'm doing for the given piece. But I typically think of the armor as what would it look like if it were newer, and I paint it to that. And then I add the weathering in towards the end. That's just a trick I learned
that's great.
In model building.
Ooh, from a quick perspective, here's a good question. What would you do Necron glowing blades in?
Color-wise?
Yeah.
Depends. I mean, you pick the color, and then they can all be done the same way. If you're
traditional green.
If you're doing Necrons, I think of Necrons as that green.
Yeah,
they don't have to be that. You could do oranges. I've seen people do pinks, hot pinks, all sorts of cool stuff. Blue. What does your host have as its primary color? The cool thing about that whole world in Games Workshop is you get to make your story, right? What does that tomb world that they came from have, going for it as far as the coloring you want to use and recognize it by? So... but again, doing something like what I'm doing where you're going up to a very bright color and then layering over the top of that bright color with like a fluorescent or the bright yellow green would be great. But yeah, that traditional yellow green would be our bright yellow green color.
Hey, Jason, it's been a hot minute. This is from Vulcan's Forge Hobbies.
Hey, Vulcan.
Been a hot minute since I was catching up. I love the new setup. Thank you so much. My question is really going to date me, but how's your Chimera coming along? Is that right, Jason? Did I say that right?
Chimera?
Is that
Camaro?
No, where is
El
it?
Camino?
This right here. I'm Khymera.
I don't know this. What is this?
I might be totally messing up.
Vulcans, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I might be totally.
Help me because I'm not remembering either. You're not dating yourself because none of us are old enough to remember what you're talking about. Help me know what it is you're talking about. Is that a model that I was painting?
War Machine. Oh, what was that? Vulcans, if you're talking about the recent stint of War Machine, maybe that's what you're talking about.
Oh, could be. Yeah, it could be. Oh, yeah, the Chimera is the bigger beastie for the new I forget what the legions are even called, but the Everblight new ones. I haven't touched them. The sculpts are a little finicky to paint, and so I got a little distracted. The 3D prints are great, but the sculpts themselves leave something to be desired in some cases on those. They're not bad, but it just kind of got me disillusioned with it there for a little bit. So yeah, I haven't gone back to it. We dove into doing some Trench Crusade and a bunch of other projects. You know me, I bounce around to whatever is high on my list of priority for being rule of cool at the time. And I'll get back to them, though. I've got, they have sent me all of the new Signar stuff, too. And that I really like. The Signar model that I painted, I had a blast with. The ones that were more biomechanical, the details just kind of got lost for me. I couldn't tell what was what on the model because the sculpt didn't seem to know what it wanted to be. Like, is this armor? Is this skin? And I'm not a fan of that, so.
Cordell's asking, if you were to brighten up the skin, how would you do it from now on? So, like, where the skin is at now, what would you do to brighten it up?
Oh, I'll take advanced flesh tone and start blending in brighter skin shades to it. You know, and it will happen. We'll get there. What I'm trying to do, and one of the cool things to talk about is how I go about staging when I paint parts of a model. I start and I look at the model inside out, is the way that I describe it, meaning that I take a look at it, I say, okay, what do I need to paint first so that later on I don't have to go back and paint something like an eyeball where I'm going to get paint around everything or near it, right? So the skin made sense to start with because the head is sitting inside of the armor. And so I start with the flesh, then the hair, just because I want, when I'm painting an area, I want to have everything that touches that area to have some color on it, at least a base coat, so that it gives me a reference of where I'm at brightness-wise. I don't ever finish any area before moving to the next. So I paint to like 50, 60, 70% of the skin in this case, and then I'll do the hair and put a little color on the hair to make sure that I like the way the skin is sizing up against the idea for the color of the hair that I have, in this case, kind of a grayish, dirty blonde. So I'll put those colors together, and if I like that, then I'll move on, and then I'll paint, like now I'm looking at the armor, because I know the armor and the shine of the armor, eventually the gold, the non-metallic gold or bronze that I do on his armor will be the brightest thing on the model. But in order to get to that part of the model, I need to paint from the inside out. I need to work color onto all those other things, because if I paint the non-metallic gold first and get it perfect, yeah, that's rad, but then I have to go paint the armor that's all around it and it's in deep recesses, I'm going to mess it up, and I don't like that, so I paint the other thing. So my goal is to get to the non-metallic gold to see how bright I make the gold or bronze or whatever we decide it's going to be, how bright I get it to where I really like it. And then once I've dialed in, because since that's going to be the brightest thing on the model, get that dialed into where I really love it, and then go back and highlight the skin, because that'll let me make better choices for how bright the skin needs to be to compete and stay in league visually with the bright things that I've done. And I try to teach people that, because there's going to be some material on every model you paint that would be the shiniest, the brightest color. Maybe it's white scars and it's actually the white armor, even though it's dirty because you're painting it white. Or painting a stormtrooper, the armor may be the brightest thing on the thing, even though it's not clean, but it's white. So it's just visually going to be the most striking, bright thing on the model. So you're going to have to punch a little bit more highlight into every color on the model to compete with the white, or it's just white and everything else looks dark, right? So I try to work towards painting the brightest thing, but I have to follow a series of steps to get there. I can't just paint the gold, because I might box myself into where painting other parts of the model are physically harder to do because the gold's in the way now. And if you get it perfect, it always sucks to like go back and get other paint on it. Get blue paint on your gold and you're like, oh, those blends were butter. And then you got to do them again. So I paint from the inside out with a goal of getting to the brightest thing, and then paint the brightest thing, and then go back and dial all the other parts into it, which is why I say I don't ever paint anything to 100% along that journey, because I'm really never done until I go back to balancing brightness and contrast. And that's really where you need to get your head around, because, you know, you'll see artists even at the very highest levels, if that exists, of art in the miniature space, and they'll paint the boots, and the boots will be perfect, and then they'll paint the legs, and legs will be perfect, and then paint the gloves, and the gloves will be perfect, and they paint all these things and post them on their Instagram, and the face is amazing, and the hands are amazing, and the weapon's amazing, and then you pull back and you look at the model, and it's kind of unbalanced, because every piece was painted to be this really bright contrast thing, and so they've lost the composition. They've lost the head-to-toe feel of what they've been painting, every little piece is its own story, which is like, I call it the disco ball problem. You get into this thing where it's just too much going on, man. It's like, yeah, that painted wonderfully from a technical aspect, but from an artistic and visual aspect, it's not appealing to me because it's too over complicated, because they just focused on these individual things as if they were not part of a whole. And remember that a person will cast shadow on itself, so everything can't be bright. So that's why I work in that method.
If you're painting a face with no beard and the size of his head were shaved, would you undercoat all the purple, then do the red and green stripes? Like if so,
I would paint the whole head purple first. Yeah, I did this. I mean, I don't know that we painted the forehead on this one, but typically with the purple, I paint the whole thing purple. And then I go back and do the red and the green over it. I think on this one, because we were showing in the video where I put the colors for the best effect, I probably put the purple in a specific spot, the red in a specific spot, and the green in a specific spot to keep it from overlapping too much. But in general, my real method is I just paint the whole thing. I base coat the whole thing purple. I would have done it like if it was a bigger model and I was doing the armor, and I would have sprayed the whole thing with an airbrush, just, royal purple, and then go back in and brush the other colors on top. Yeah. Yep. King Tone, no problem. That's what this whole show and our company is about, man. We want people painting miniatures. If you use our tools, even better. But I love it. I would love to have everybody that's out there watching have more fun painting miniatures, regardless of what paint brushes or anything. And a lot of that has to do with the technique. It's 90% technique, 10% tools. Because as you get better with your technique, you start being able to pick up whatever tool is next to you, so long as it's the right color or the right size of brush, and you can create wonderful things with it. And that's what makes the hobby fun, is when you get up knowing that you spent your time was better spent having hobbying than if you'd have been watching TV or something, right? I never want anybody to get up from hobbying thinking like, oh crap, I should have folded my socks. In order to do that, you got to have more fun and be more confident about your painting. So that's what all these steps are for.
XEO, thank you for the sub. If you guys are just tuning in, we are doing some more black armor on this old, what's it? Tiger L. Anthony.
Tiger L. Anthony. Anthony L. Tigre. Tony the Tiger. Cordell, yes, exactly, right. Cordell says, I'm right now in the same problem. My lion's skin was looking bright enough, but after painting his green hood, it came out that it's not. And that's, again, why it's good to tune your brain to say, I'm not going to finish the skin. I'm going to get it to where I like the look of it. I like the look of this. Then I'm going to start painting the colors around it so that I can start deciding where I want my brightness to be. Because if you paint the skin too bright and then you start painting the hood, and then the hood now has to get brighter to compete with the skin, and now the whole model's overly bright when that wasn't what you were looking for. So keep everything in that mid-tone and first highlight level area, and then go back and think about material. What would be shiny? Would the hood be shiny because it's like a silken cloth? Then you paint it brighter than the skin and go back and dial the skin, and then it's a balancing act. Then it's a little bit brighter on the skin, a little bit brighter on the hood. Maybe then maybe darken the skin up a little bit. Then you find your balance in there between those things that are next to each other, and then draw back out another step and say, okay, how does that compare to the rest of the model? Is now the hood and the face too bright for the body? So, right, it's a full composition from head to toe on every model you paint. Even tabletop, gaming miniatures would typically want to be brighter on the head and shoulders, and that triangle that I talk about, that is the upside down triangle from the shoulders to the crotch. You want everything in the top end of that triangle, the head, the shoulders, any part of the body that's raised up above shoulder level, so hands and arms if he's lunging or got an axe, right? Everything that's above the shoulder level winds up being really hot, bright. But then you go from the shoulders down to the crotch or the belly button, and you start shading as you go down. And then everything outside of that triangle tends to want to be darker because you're shaded on the side of your ribs from the arms and the shoulders, right? You're shaded on the hips and legs from the upper torso. And then you start looking at like knees, depending on the position. If the knees jutting out from the rest of the body because they're running, then the knee could be brighter, but it gets darker as it goes back towards the thigh where the body's casting a shadow, things like that. And so think in those terms. Same concept, right? You can just limit it to being more of head and shoulders are brighter. Everything else is darker if you're doing a gaming miniature. As you start doing more detail on more display type miniatures, then it's every part of the model has to fit into that scheme, not just this area of the model goes brighter. It's like, okay, within that area, how does the face compare to the hood, right?
Here's a good one. From Mr. Blue. What would you do differently for a 3-hour paint job versus a typical, in quotes, 30 or 300 hour paint job? So what's the difference between that 30 and 300 hour paint job? 300 hours.
Oh boy, you got a point, and
that's
there
true,
is a big
yeah.
difference, and the difference is detail. The difference is how much time do you spend in the minutia, right? Because you'll start most of your models off very similarly. I think a lot of us get into that. I know how I like the base coat. I know how I like to build in my shadows. I know how I like to look at all of the different parts of the model as I start to go. And then it's like, okay, well, how far do I break it down? Like I just said, looking at the parts of the body differently. Can we go back to the model? As we go back and think in terms of like parts of the body and saying, okay, I want the torso brighter than the legs. That's the way I would think about it for gaming. Then I would start breaking parts further down into saying, head versus helmet, versus shoulders versus forearms, and how those all compare to one another for the 30-hour model. And then the 300-hour model would be, what do the veins on the forearm look like? What does the nuance of all the skin color look like? How realistic am I making it? What scene is it in? And so it really is just time on the details. It's funny to say that I paint them all the same way. I just cut corners to make time shorter. This is the reality.
Also, Derp Stick, our Hobby Knight is retractable and it is super reliable. I've used a bunch of just X-Acto blades, retractable hobby knives and stuff, and ours is super solid.
It's flat, so it doesn't roll off the table.
You can replace the blade very easily.
The blade replacement is super nice.
I love ours.
We work with an amazing company with that had a potential new design that they weren't really interested in doing anything with, and we went in and we were able to refine it with them. It's got a neat C-channel body that's steel that I helped design that makes it very sturdy and have a heft to it. I love it. It's the perfect knife for me. But that's kind of how I attack everything. I'm like, what would I want if I were making an X-Acto knife? I want it to never roll off the table because I've had too much of that in my life, and having to immediately be afraid that my foot is going to get impaled by this point going point first onto the ground.
Where'd you get this model, Jason?
I don't remember. I think we said it was an Artel W bust we found out.
I can't remember.
I feel like it was from Artel W, the Ukrainian team. That they have some amazing sculpts that take from Warhammer and that world.
Welcome in, everybody, for just coming in. It seems like more people are trickling in. If you've got questions, definitely tag us, and I'll throw them in the queue. But we're just continuing with some black armor today.
Radial highlights like what I'm doing here are pretty difficult for people. One of the ways that you have to do when you're going, because the chest is like a sphere or a spheroid, right? And it typically is kind of a combination. It's a cylinder as it goes down the trunk of the body, but up top towards the shoulders, it starts becoming more of a sphere, and armor follows that sphere. And so you have to bring these highlights, like kind of pick your spot like we have, and then bring your highlights in this kind of star pattern, this starburst, where I'm bringing lines towards this little rivet area all around. And then glaze to get rid of the little starburst lines, unless you like them. Sometimes they look really cool because they're like little scritches in the armor. But I'm having to just kind of pull in light glazes of bright color my brush strokes up towards the rivet or down to the rivet, depending on where my direction is. Space Marine shoulder pads, all those kind of shapes will always give you that problem of how do I get that highlight to not look like just a circle sitting on top of the shoulder or a circle sitting on the breastplate. And the starburst way of doing it will keep you from creating a circle but still give you a radial or circular highlight that you need.
Ooh, Miss Momoza's rated with a party of 21.
Hello.
Welcome in, Raiders.
Welcome, Raiders. Hello, hello.
Welcome in. We are just painting this lovely bust of Tiger L. Anthony.
Antonio El Tigre.
Yeah, that's
Tony the Tiger. We have he is a I don't want to call it a knockoff. That's not fair. The sculpt is really good, but it's basically a bust of Lionel Johnson from Warhammer 40K. But
Yep.
Games Workshop doesn't make busts, so other people take it onto themselves to sculpt amazing fun models to paint. This is one of them. So we're calling him the legally distinct Anthony L. Tigre.
That's right. Thank you so much for the raid. If you guys have questions, tag us. Just me and Jason in here, nice and calm and quiet, and just
it's a cozy,
delicious day of painting.
Cozy day in the studio with you, Chris.
That's right. I'll sometimes go and get into the zone watching the little brush strokes. So
just kick him under the table.
Awkwardish Panda, who's your favorite panda and why is it awkward? Also, Tony Tiger's looking BA. Yes, he is, and it's coming out real nice. Yes, he's painted his thumb better than the minis. Yeah.
Lots of times.
Jason's painted his thumb to a higher quality than the best minis. That's all right.
Lots of times my thumb palette is testament. I had somebody say, hey, could we win your thumb palette? I thought that was a little...
Resub for 53 months? That's not true.
What? Nobody likes us that long. They're insane. So again, just creeping around the model, finding spots to bring the shine and the brightness in, knowing this whole time that I'm going to go over this with black wash. Probably a little bit of black and Payne's gray wash. I get to cheat and use the products you don't get.
I was gonna ask, why wouldn't you do transparent black?
You could.
You could?
You could. Yeah, you could, but with the new Payne's Gray wash, I'm thinking I'll mix that with the black wash.
Right.
The Payne's Gray wash won't be available to the public until Adepticon.
Oh, okay.
So I'm cheating a little bit by using products that I can't tell you to go buy.
That's okay.
But we do that around here just to flirt with death from chat, threats of evil from chat as we go.
Awkwardish used our paints on stream. Yes, thank you, Awkwardish. We always love that.
You love Adepticon. It's going to be a huge year this year. It's the first year in Milwaukee at the big convention center. Huge facility. Really stoked.
It's going to be a fun time.
Fun time. 24 new colors coming out from us. Big announcement from us with those 24 colors that I think is going to be great. People are going to lose their minds.
Ooh, here's a good one. See, double. Any advice of painting wet effect? Working on a model that's reminiscent of Neo when he walks up in the clear goo from the Matrix. Ooh.
It's all gloss, right? Being able to put shine like I'm doing right now with this armor to pull off the effect of like shiny spots, right? Being able to do that with a body, you can imagine if I did this same kind of bright speckling that I'm doing on the chest plate here, if I did it on his forehead, it would look wet, right?
Right.
Like I could make the forehead look like he was sweating if I just put some bright shine in certain areas and maybe did it with more of a stipple effect, which to exaggerate is doing your painting in dots. Right? Where if you do a lot of dots around an area, you get a texture, and then you fill in towards the brighter area with more dots, right? More dots. And you start getting your ability to blend with that, but that can create the idea of like, I use it on wool, but on skin, if you do that with brightness, it looks like perspiration, like those little beads of sweat coming up off the skin. Or if you came out of slime or water, the droplets of water too, because water... It will sheet on skin, which will just make skin shiny if you get up out of the pool. But then it tends to pull back because water has a high surface tension. So it tends to pull itself into droplets. And the oil on skin helps that happen, right? And so you can do it in that kind of stippled effect. You do like a bigger shine spot and then towards the edges make it stippled so you look like the water's pulling into droplets where there's less of it. It's a tough effect to pull off, but it's doable.
Okay, so Captain Beardy, if we're not going to Adepticon, what's going to be the best place to hear all those announcements fast? We will definitely, you will know. we'll do social media blasts. We'll have videos on it. Yeah, you'll definitely be in.
Oh yeah, you won't miss it.
Nobody will. If you can't make a show, we totally get it, and we always want to make sure that everybody has it available to them.
Yeah, and our goal always when we do stuff like that at the shows, can we go back to the model?
Yeah.
When we do stuff like that at the shows, I think that our goal is that either the product would be available for general public on the site during the show or within a week or so after.
Yep.
That's always based around our production capability, unfortunately. Since we manufacture our own stuff, it's just how much pressure do we have to put on the team in production to get enough made to support the wider public being able to buy versus the stuff we need to make for the show.
Yeah, so show and online. So it might be because Catherine's asking, new paint release will be available at the same time. No, not at the same time, right?
Might be.
But
it just depends. We're trying to figure all that out right now. We're not producing the new paints yet. That'll start at the beginning of February. And then as the team lets me know how they're coming with it, then we'll make a decision. I say me. Kyle, our general manager, and the team in ops will decide if they feel like they can make enough to also say go live, because the go live part hurts us in a couple of ways on the internet, because not only does it sell a tremendous amount, which is great, it also means we have to have all hands on deck to ship those orders. And a bunch of those hands are at the show. So we always are careful with our expectation setting, because it's hard to get the communication out there that, yeah, it's available, but it'll be a week before it ships to you, because that's not how we work. We usually ship within 24 to 48 hours, even in slow times. And so we have to be very careful, because people have the expectation that it ships like Monument Hobbies always does. But if half of our fulfillment team is at a show, then it won't ship as fast. So we have to plan around things that aren't just availability of product too. But very close by. Don't worry, you'll get it.
Cordell, what's the status of the new brush-on primer?
It's in-house, awaiting labels. So we are ready to produce. We just have to have the labels made up so that we can put it into bottles. We don't ever bottle anything until the labels are done in general, just because it can get confusing, especially with white and black, because it'll look like every other white and black paint we have if we're not careful. So we haven't produced them yet. But yeah, it'll happen as soon as the labels get in-house. Gabe and the team have ordered those, I think. So they should just be a matter of production time. Our label manufacturers here in country, and are usually pretty fast turnaround. So
Drac, all the pressure. I hope to replace all my old paints, but we'll have to keep the OG bottles for sentimental value. Yeah, some of those.
You got the 17 mils?
Some of those.
How OG a bottle do you have?
Floating around here. Oh, Zazin's asking, any updates on collaborations with the Trench Crusade team?
I got some really exciting stuff that I did this week that is in process right now that I'll hopefully be able to tell you about in the coming weeks. So there's all sorts of cool stuff going on. As soon as we get more information, we've got to prove some stuff out with them, get some approvals from them, have them approve and us approve some things that are going on. But yeah, we're looking forward to doing a lot of really cool stuff with the team. Those guys are fantastic.
I took a deeper look at their, their plague faction. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. But
Black Chalice.
Yeah, some of those models are gnarly looking in a good way.
Yeah, they are.
They're
disgusting.
Very cool.
Yeah. Disgusting.
Drac, you have the original bottles to go with the original brushes? Dang.
That's commitment right there. The
testament.
17 mil or OG release. We have some of that in house, but it wasn't ever.
It's around. I've seen it. I was, as I was cleaning, it definitely was I find some old relics in here.
It was a pain point for me. So it's odd for me to say this, but it was something I wasn't proud of, as I should have been when we relaunched the paint. It kept me from being as proud of Pro-Acryl when it launched as it should have been.
The 17 mil?
Yeah, because we had a partner that we were working with at the time made a huge mistake in the bottles, in the ordering of the bottles. And it put us on a timeline where we couldn't correct it before our launch for Black Friday in 2018. And I was livid. You can imagine, right? Our whole goal was to always offer larger bottles of paint. That was one of our biggest things out of the gates. And so it just killed us. It was disheartening. But when they came out and they were out, it lifted my spirits up. But it was a tough one for me. So I never really cared about them.
Yeah.
That's funny to say, right?
No, I mean,
the colors were great,
happens.
but the whole situation revolving around it, was like, oh my God, what are we doing?
Let's see. We got Iterator. So, will there be a Trench Crusade paint set released?
No. That I can say no.
Derp stick, maybe.
No need for another paint set. The world does not
maybe
need another paint set, especially not one that's just there because there's a game.
Yep. Maybe a TC texture trainer. Source. I'm trying to give up tobacco, so I'm sat here eating some goldfish. Yeah, that's good. Pepperidge Farm. Good old goldfish.
I'm a big goldfish fan.
Don't try paint. Don't do that, Wad. Don't eat that paint.
But yeah, the Trench Crusade team has done a knockdown job. They're probably all as tired as they can be from getting the deal put together and done.
Yeah, I mean that's a wild campaign they ran. It's cool, but it's definitely definitely has spoken to a lot of people for sure. The aesthetic, the game, all of that.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is that it has an amazing aesthetic that scratches that grimdark itch.
Yeah,
but in a way that is less.
It feels
full fantasy, I think,
it feels
right?
Real.
It has
feels
a gritty.
More real.
It has a gritty, like, oh, it only is one turn away from being real.
Yeah,
it's like, what if the Crusaders would have opened a portal to hell? What if all that did exist? Yeah.
Paint liquor. Any plans to do a wizard's butt texture trainer at Monument?
We have thought about it. That has come up quite a few times. I think it's on the whiteboard. I think it would be really funny to do one. I would kind of like the bold sense of humor. I would do that just to like sell 10 of them. It would be a really bad investment. And people at the company might get mad at me, but I like to have fun and I would do it. Just for the sake of having this crazy thing that generated a lot of nonsensical laughter in the community.
Papa Chicken was saying that he sent an important email to the FLGS to carry paint, but he said they've been burned before. Well, we won't burn them.
By who?
Yeah, who?
I mean, how do you get burned? Buying paint and then not being able to get it?
Yes.
All you have to do is tell them we've been around for 8 years, right?
Yep.
9 years. We have literally the number 3 best-selling paint line on the planet. They will print money. But they can call us and we'll tell them.
Yep. Yeah, and he was saying that other people, other FLGSs love ours. Yep, we do our best for the best.
It's one of those things where we completely respect it. There are a lot of stores that do not have a history or an owner or aren't focused as much on the hobby side, but they do have a good community of players and painters and such, but they don't understand the hobby as much because maybe they're a card shop, maybe they're, it's just not about painting miniatures. And so, we give them the ability to, hey, bring in some of our paints, let your community play with them, see what the feedback is, and then make your decision. We're a really low pressure deal. We don't have any high tension salespeople that have to make quota. We don't operate like that. So that part makes it easy. It also means that we're a little old world in that sense too. We want to only sign up people that are really excited about dealing with the paint, because we believe in really good partnerships. We want to make sure we can get the paint in their hands when they order it. But yeah.
So Jason,
yes, sir.
At this point in the armor, when a typical question would be like, when do you know when you're done or not? And is that all subjective?
Well, I mean, with this piece, I'm still very early on.
I'm sorry, with this, like the, what's the word I'm looking for? The highlights, correct? The radial highlights here.
Uh-huh.
when do you typically like stop doing that?
Well, I guess it depends. Like this for a gaming miniature is good, right? The armor on that forearm is starting to look good, and in like the section from the front of the elbow to here, I'm still working on the hand, and I haven't done anything on the upper arm or the shoulder. But this area is starting to really come into focus. I'm liking it. It's not the color I want the armor to be yet. It's not black armor. It's close. When you look at it, it looks less gray the more brightness I put on it. But then the black wash / Payne's gray wash mix that I'll do will solidify it as black armor. So I'll still have, in my head, I have 2 steps I have to do. 3, I got to finish the highlighting that I'm doing now. Then when I'm done there, I'll put the wash over it to darken it up, which could be a glaze. I'm just going to use a wash as a glaze. I'm not going to wash it like I would wash a Titan if I was just trying to splooge black wash all over it to make it look dirty. I'll do a very refined pass with the wash using it as a glaze to darken it and to pull the color into the world of blacks without hopefully losing, my dark purple undertone in the shadows and all the things that we kind of forget about, right? The more I paint this, we forget that we have all this color in the armor already. But I'll do that wash layer. Then I'll come back and I'll highlight it again with the white blue. So the black wash will darken everything up, including the highlights, because I'll put it over the top of the highlights I have right now and everything. Then I'll come back with white blue, and that'll make the white blue even punchier than it is on the model right now, because the white blue is being added over a color that's while not super close to white blue, still brighter. But I'm going to knock all these colors down and then pump white blue back onto it as an edge highlight and for scratches and detailing. And then that'll make the black armor. Then I'll be done. But that's this model. I might not do that same level of detail on something else. I mean, we've painted all sorts of things with, various armor types, and it just is a matter of how much do you want to go. Because like when I look at Percival's body pile, Percival's body pile is about where my armor is right now, is where I stopped for Percival's body pile and the non-metallic armor on there. Right? So the steel armor on there is only about where I'm at here. I didn't go back and refine it. I don't need to, because that's not the level I'm painting this. And Percival should be the best painted part of it, with the bodies being kind of, beat up and so on and so forth, because they're not the prime characters. So his armor's brighter. I've done more detailing with his. His I did do the wash after and then come back and re-highlight and all of that. So, on Percival, the owl, I've got more detailing. And then on the bodies that are less, they're relevant to the storytelling, but less relevant to the visual of, they don't have to be as well painted. Right? It almost benefits the overall composition to have them be a little desaturated, a little out of focus, a little more sketchy, because it makes him the hero, right? So I'm always thinking in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish. What does this model mean to me? I want this lion.
Use case?
Sorry, kind of? Anthony L. Tigre. Right. I want Anthony L. Tigre to look good. So we're going to spend some time on him. It's not going to be a 300-hour model. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Everybody's asking for a wizard's butt texture trainer in chat.
All right. So you think we'll sell more than 10? Is that what you're saying, chat?
I guarantee we would sell more than 10, because I'd probably buy one. So there's one. We got 9
more, chat. 9 more. Well, it was like the bold sense of humor when I did that. It was like nobody's gonna care about this. And if we sell one, I'll do it. But we put it at like $500, and we sold 2. And then we had a mad clamor of people that were like, "Hey, I want one of those." And I was like, "Not for $500, you don't." That was a joke. That was a total meme thing. And we hand painted the ones that
everybody will buy one. I know everybody in chat will buy one here for sure.
So yeah, the chances are I'll do that. I have some other texture trainers happening.
Yes, General Ginkgo, your photographer is. From I heard, I think you were saying it was. I'm trying to remember who you said who took the photo, but that one picture you posted was
so good.
Great.
Yeah, Ginkgo sent us one we've been using, both internally and externally, because it's like a glamour shot of that model. It's so good. It's so good. When he showed me that, I was like, "Oh my god, that's so good."
If you guys are just tuning in, welcome in. We're not finishing. Oh my gosh, we're not even close. I was just about to say we're finishing this up today. No, we're not. We
I don't know
are
what kind of
taking
dream world
we
you
are
live in.
taking our time. Sorry, I was reading a past comment. Anyway, if you guys got questions, please tag Monument, and I'll see them here and pitch them over to Jason. But if not, welcome in.
Welcome to Chris's Dream Fugue.
I'm sorry. I was.
Where Jason actually finishes models, I guess. I don't know how that happens. I don't know. I don't want to be.
Hey, we gonna get this done?
Don't
Right, let's go.
Don't pin that on me, buddy.
Sorry. That was I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get this done. Today.
Don't pin
Yeah.
your wild dreams on me, my friend. I don't finish models.
That's okay.
That is not my job.
But that's it. It's all subjective, right? I am finished in my mind.
Oh no. No, I in my mind actually I've gotten distracted by the next cool thing I want to do, and that's where I've departed to.
Avian's asking Chris, why are you here? That's a great question. Why are we here, Avian? Why? Drac, when does Jason finish models? Since when? I've seen it.
Chris has been privy to finished models, believe it or not. As have all of you, cretins.
Yes, I am in a fugue state during the challenge. Yes, I was. Yesterday, I had a little bit of sleepy ha-has because we were having a little bit of technical difficulties. But hey, you know what? We delivered. And that's all I'm going to say.
I saw in Discord that people were happy that you two still had jobs after me watching the VOD, and I nearly typed in there, I haven't watched the VOD.
That's all right.
But this makes me think I should go watch it.
I'm going to edit it out before Jason goes well and watches it. No, we were having a great time. I think people really enjoyed the setup, and we were just enjoying everybody's submissions. I was using the term "it's speaking to me" a lot. I definitely did that.
What was the it?
Just anything. So there was thing on the model. I'm like, Ryan D had a really great OSL effect on his.
Oh, nice.
On his fire, and I'm like, that is speaking to me. So
Nice.
A lot of things were doing that.
Cool. Some great entries.
Yes, you guys did great.
Some scritches. These are not in the sculpt, so I'm making these up as I go. The sculpt does not have any scratches. The sculpt makes it look like the armor is super clean and new. I don't like that. I want scratches, so he gets scratches.
Are they scratches or are they scritches?
They're like dings.
Ding, ding, ding. Oh, speaking of ding, 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 we were going ham the other night in PoE.
Oh, also true.
Ding, ding, ding. That just reminded me of that. Ghost Hunter, that's right. We graduated Baby J to Adult J. So I came up with a joke where I'm like, "Hey, you're Adult J Cabana," which I got a real kick out of.
That's horrible.
No, I thought you would love that joke.
That's horrible.
Hey, it's Adult J Cabana, right?
That's absolutely horrible.
I did say
Chad, I have nothing to do with this. I do not condone this behavior.
So this is kind of the fun part for me as I'm watching Jason do the little scritches. I hit record, right, for extra B-roll for this video idea I'm having, and I'll get to hear all of this fun audio, but we'll cut out like little snippets here and there. So that's always a fun adventure for me. But I'm sticking with the Adult J Cabana chat.
That's horrible. This is the part you were asking, like part of where I put weathering on.
Yes.
Is now, right? I'm doing this bright highlight, and so I need to be able to pull like brightness, because even though this won't have necessarily a edge highlight down here on the lower part of the elbow, I'm pulling brightness in because what it shows is that there's been enough of a ding that's deformed the metal to where now there's a portion of that ding that's pointed back out and catching the light, right? So I'm highlighting the bottom of these little dings a little bit. And it adds just a lot of texture and life to the model that, in this case, isn't on it. But I do like the idea of, stuff looking a little bit more battle-worn.
And that's the white-blue?
Yeah, this is white-blue. This is just, all of this armor is done in two colors, minus the purple base coat.
Yep. That's super cool. Yeah, the wash over it was gonna be really nice.
And then he said it 8 times in the next 20 seconds.
I know it was silly. When I have those discoveries, it makes me laugh, chat.
Well,
makes me laugh. Brings me joy.
We'll hear that for years, chat.
You will.
Years. Literal years.
In a horrible Italian accent. Dolce Gabbana.
And he's Italian, chat.
That's right. If you guys are just tuning in, if you've got questions, make sure to tag Monument Hobbies. Oh, here's one. Look at that. Are there any tips to remove or lower the chalkiness if I layer several layers with glazes? If I layer several layers or with glazes. Okay, yeah.
Not really. The trick is to, like, fixing it is the hard part, right? Because you've baked that in as where the pigment has clumped and dried because the paint was too thin is what that's caused by. Okay? So when you over thin your paint, it floats on the surface of the model. The pigment will float. And as that pigment floats, it's prone to just kind of randomly collect and clump up with other pigment and give you that chalky texture, which is really just uneven surface disbursement of the pigment and the paint. So there's not a good way to fix it other than to not get it. And I hate to say that, but that's the case. And if you're painting with pro-acryl, the way we tell it is our paints start more fluid than other hobby paints. Other hobby paints, the way they're manufactured, require a heavier base because they have to, in order to suspend enough pigment to get a vibrant color, they have to float it in a heavy base. Think about pigment is like, if you dump sand in water, it immediately goes to the bottom. So you got to thicken the water up in order for the sand to float, right? And that's what paint is. So the medium, which is the liquid, has to be thicker to hold paint particles in it, the pigment particles in it, okay? So our formula is unique because it can be more fluid, more like water, right? Easier to paint with, but hold a tremendous amount of pigment and not have the pigment fall to the bottom and separate. Everybody else uses a much thicker base, some to the point that they've had to call it like a gel base, which is not conducive to what we do because we really want the paint to be more fluid because we're not trying to cover up details and we don't want to see our brush strokes, the texture of our brush strokes, right? We don't want our paint to have ridges in it. At the end, we want it to lay very flat when it dries. And so a lot of hobby paints you learn to thin, Duncan's line's called too thin coats. Like you baked into their whole marketing that you have to thin their paints. Our paints, you don't have to. The only reason you thin pro-acryl is if you want to lower its opacity. So it's diluting the paint that you're doing with pro-acryl in a perfect world. Everything you see here, I'm painting off of this dry palette, right? Mm-hmm. Here's my puddle of paint that I'm using, right? And it's just the water on the brush that allows me to turn it into a glazing material or whatever I need, because the paint starts as a completely usable paint with just the dampness on your brush to paint the model without leaving texture and all of that. So if you over thin our paint, you can over thin it quicker. It'll still glaze really nice, but you got to make sure you're maintaining and managing the amount of liquid you're putting on the models to avoid that clumpiness that turns into chalkiness.
Does thinning with medium instead of water help with that?
It can, because it's less fluid, so it keeps the pigment from doing that float on the surface thing. Our glaze wash medium is a great way to dilute because it keeps it thick like paint, as opposed to as you add more and more water, obviously it gets more and more liquid. But that's the whole point of my thumb palette. You'll hear me say this probably every stream, is that I'm always removing a lot of the fluid, the liquid of the paint, onto my finger so that I'm never putting a big droplet of paint on the model when I go over here to put color down.
Yeah.
Because that droplet is uncontrollable, right? I can't really move it around the way I want to guarantee the pigment goes where I want. It'll just kind of skate across the surface. That's what washes are, right? Washes run more like water than normal paint.
Yep.
So just got to be careful with that and learn to control the viscosity is what that's called of the paint better.
Pro Paint Taster Arizona tap water is absolutely amazing thinner.
Yep. Best thinner in the world. Arizona tap water. 100%. Not even a contest. Angel Heraldez has Spanish water. I laugh at you. He and I had an email where he was talking about Spanish water and this, and I said, heck, we got Arizona water.
Yes, Ice Wolf, a thumb palette. Jason, it looks like your first time chat. Yes, he is. He loves using his thumb palette.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's my favorite tool. You know what I really love is I love peeling the paint off, like at dinner at night. I'll just be, it's like a fiddle. It's like a fiddle thing, you know, because I'll just be kind of not like talking or watching TV or whatever. And I'll look over and I'm peeling the off with my hand. It's become like a game for me over the years.
This is a good one. Jason, give me what's your elevator pitch for your thumb palette? If somebody sees your thumb and asks you, what's the deal with that? What's that elevator pitch of that? Why is it important? Why do you use it? Why do you like it so much?
In order to control the amount of material on my brush, I have to constantly be wicking paint off of the brush. And over the years, I found that a paper towel took too much moisture all at once. I have a paper towel here that I, when I clean my brush, you want to switch over to palette cam, easier for me to show this.
Oh, do it on that main one, actually.
Okay.
For me.
So if I'm here, right, then I have my cup, right? So here's my Monument Hobby Nerd cup that I clean my water in. It's I can't even call that semi-clean. It's dirty-ass tap water. But I come in with my brush and I rinse it against the side of the brush or the side of the cup and get the paint out, right? And now I have as much water as this brush will hold. So it's a lot, right? See the shininess on the brush? That's a lot of water. If I come over here and touch that to my thumbnail, it puts a big droplet on there. Imagine that being the model. If I touch it with that much fluidity, it's hard to control where that paint goes. It's not a big blob. It's hard. I rub it all over the place. It like falls into the crevices and gets color into the panel lining that you didn't want it to go into. So I use my paper towel first if I know I don't need that much water, and I'll do like 1-2 swipes. Now I know it has less, right? Then I'll go over and I'll grab some paint, right? But now I've got quite a bit of paint on the brush. And so in order to reduce that amount, because still if I go over and paint with it, it's going to be a little bit blobby. See, I've got that shiny droplet on there because it's still got too much. That's hard to control. Unless I'm basing. If I'm basing the whole model, then I don't care. I just spread the paint around. Great. But in most cases, when I'm doing detail like I'm doing now, I'll take most of the color off, and it seems like a waste. But now I have very controllable paint. Now I have the tip of the brush does a lot of work, keeps a nice, consistent line. I can do really fine detail, or I can still put out a lot of color. But every time I do, it's very consistent in the amount of color that gets delivered off of the brush because there's no big dollop of paint waiting to kind of blop off of there. So now I can do everything I need to do, and when I notice that my strokes have got less paint coming on or whatever, then I go and I do it again, and I clean, wipe on my paper towel, grab the paint, and come over here and get most of the paint gone so that I can do my fine lines again and get, a nice consistent flow of paint going. Right? So that's what the thumb palette is for. It is where I control the amount of moisture that's on my brush at all times. Now, like I said, if I'm base coating, you won't see me use it because the amount of paint on my brush can all go on the model and I'll just spread it around because I'm not worried about getting it in places it shouldn't go. I'm base coating the whole model. I'm painting the whole model blue. I'm painting the whole model black. So it doesn't matter, right? But as soon as I have to start looking at putting paint in specific places and not getting it on places next to that, I come over here and I control the amount of paint that's on my brush. Right. And you'll just get used to the feel of it, right? Because if you do this too long, you'll notice you stop getting paint and then you go over to the model and do your brush stroke and you don't get anything. And so you're like, oh, I took off too much. And so you'll back off the next time.
Great. And that's it in a nutshell. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Chris. Could you punch me in, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
It also is as a just to piss Chris off. It's also a great way that when I'm using the thumb palette, I can see the opacity of my paint. Like I can put this paint over the last color I painted and see how much shows through. So as I'm going along, this is also not only getting the control of the material on the paint, but showing me the opacity. I know I've got a pretty good glaze here because that darker color is showing through the color I'm putting on. I know it's going to act the same way on the model.
Yeah.
So when I come over here now, I know I'm safe going in and putting in my reflection color because it's not just going to be like painting white on this surface. It'll still give me some contrast, but I've already tested it on my thumb, so I know what opacity I'm really going to get. So it performs double duty in that sense.
Now that was great. Mr. Blue, why the cork holder and not the proper $90 Games Workshop holder? The cork?
You answered your own question. I'm a cheap bastard.
We'll have 100 corks. It's also because, personally, I like having the cheaper handles because I want a handle on everything. I don't like removing handles and
this shape is what I like.
The shape is nice.
It's very ergonomic. When your hand clasps together, that shape is really nice.
That circle-ish, that round.
Because you'll notice I rest 2 of my fingers on the underneath, so having that big flat surface underneath is nice. Then I use my middle finger on my right hand to clasp that, and then my thumb holds it from the front. And then my thumb will float up onto the model from time to time as I rotate it and want to hold it if I'm doing upside down or whatever. But this gives me a really good way to hold it without having to grip it. I don't want to be gripping the model. I want it to sit loosely in my hand because everything that I do painting-wise is about not having stress around the work surface. I don't grip. If I find myself gripping the model for some reason, I'll notice that my pinky starts getting strained and will shake. Right? And so I'll have to set the model down. You might notice every now and then you might not see it because I do it off camera, but I'll flex my hand because for some reason, like this muscle has gotten strained or whatever. I'm at a standing desk, right? And so my forearm rests on the tabletop, but I just hold it loose. Like you could come up and you could just take this model right out of my hand at all times, right? Even with my thumb here, you could be like, dude, I don't grip the model. It just lays in my hand and gravity does the work so that I can move it how I need to.
And a very, very good side note here is that in the world of film, filming Jason's painting is some of the easiest things to film because of how he holds his paint. So out of selfishness, I like how
you appreciate it
a lot. I can really appreciate it. Because I've always like tried to film myself at home too. I'm like, man, you gotta like put it up here. I'm starting to paint further and further away just because of like good camera angles too.
Yeah.
But speaking of the handles, they're also very cost effective too. So basically, you can't do, going back to that Frost's question, so you basically can't do 20 to 30 very thin glazes. You need to stronger.
Man, what a waste of time. I will be blunt with you and tell you that is a waste of time. If you can't do it in 3 to 4 coverages of the paint you're using, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the few times that I will say that. And I will only say that with acrylics. If you're doing oils, you can do 30 coats. And a lot of that comes from the artistic world of glazing with oils because the pigmentation in the oil has a different solvent base. It's not dealing with water. And the fact that the high tension of a water-based suspension is going to pull that pigment into puddles, so to speak, as it dries when it gets too watery. Oil won't do that. You thin oil with like a lacquer thinner or a mineral spirit, something like that. It'll get thin, but you're in control of where the pigment goes still because it still has a heavier solvent, that oil base, right? That linseed or whatever oil they're using, that synthetic oil, that helps the pigment lay smoothly where your brush put it. So oils are totally different conversation. Acrylics, 3 to 4 tops. If you're finding yourself having to glaze more than 3, because here's a big thing. Not only, even if you're good at glazing and you find yourself doing, and I say good, you're controlling the moisture on the brush, but you're still over thinning the paint. So it's still way, way too translucent. I see a lot of people that are trying to like say glaze red and they do 13, 12, 13, 14 coats of red. What you're really trying to do is paint red, not glaze red. You're trying to get back to red because the only reason you had to do the 12, 13, 20 coats is because you didn't have enough color on your brush. And I get that you want to see the layer beneath it, but you can do that with one layer. Then up the intensity of the next layer instead of keeping them the same thinness. Stop diluting as much for the next layer and pull it in. and then stop diluting the next one and the next one until by the end you're basically using the paint out of the bottle, right, for that final spot. And that's like 3-4 stages max that you need to do that to get a really good finish. And then maybe you glaze another thin color or layer of that same color over all of those if you've created texture or whatever. That's really the key to getting good at glazing or filtering, is being able to use less filters, because the more you use, the more desaturated that color is. It will never have the same vibrancy as the color you're trying to paint if you do 30 coats. If you notice, models that are done with all glazes don't have a vibrancy to them. They are like military models, right? The color's there, it's red, but it looks real faded and beat up. If that's what you're going for, glazing lots of very thin layers will give you a very desaturated layer of color. But a lot of times people are disgruntled because they're like, I'm glazing, but I'm not happy with it. My bright highlights aren't as bright as I want them to be. It won't be, because you've desaturated it by separating the pigment so much in each layer, and you're requiring each layer to lock more pigment into the space between and under that didn't get filled by the paint underneath it, and that it just is random. It's never going to happen, you know. So what I've done is I started glazing with a thinner paint on the white blue, if we can go back to the model. And now I'm moving up to where, you know, my first pass was very thin. My second pass isn't quite as thin here. And then my third pass is basically not a completely dry brush, because I need paint to come off of it, right? But my third pass here will be such that now the paint is pretty vibrant, like almost right out of the bottle. It's still thin enough that I can paint details with it. Right? And that's how you get that blended look in there.
Nice.
Same color, just various different levels of opacity created by not being as thin as the last layer I put on. Same thing down here.
If you guys are just tuning in, welcome in. Doing some more black armor on Tiger L. Anthony. If you have questions, make sure to tag Monument, and I'll get to them. No problem, Frost. Just need to learn to glaze the right way. Yep, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, controlling the moisture on the brush. The level of moisture on the brush is the big one, so that you're never applying too much liquid to the model at any given time, because like I said, the thinner you go, the more the paint wants to float around the surface. And as you do that, the pigment goes into crevices, and we've all had that problem. It starts acting like a wash and goes where you don't want it to go. So controlling the amount of moisture, right? Making sure that you don't put so much moisture that you've diluted all the color out of it, because that'll start desaturating and force you into doing more layers than you need to, right? And those are the two aspects of it, right? Picking the right color. You generally want to go darker, a little darker of a color than you think, because by diluting it, it will appear lighter on the model.
You know, Ugg is asking or saying, when I glaze with white, it always gets chalky. I've never tried that myself either.
Yep, because you're thinning it too much, and it's happening with all your colors. White is the one you're seeing it with, or ivories and things like that is the one you're noticing it with, because they create so much contrast. You see them next to the other colors you're glazing over much more than you would if you were glazing like purple in the shadows. If you're using the same method, the same amount of moisture, you're glazing the same, using the same technique, all of your paints are doing it. They're just not all visible in doing it. The brighter the paint goes, the more you see the problems with it, right? Like me right now, the more I see the brush strokes for the bright color that I'm using, right? Whereas the darker the color, it's not generating any contrast. So I have to be more careful here. My brush strokes have to be more deliberate as I go with brighter and brighter colors.
Dante, I'm newer to painting minis. Can you please explain glaze? Is it's a type of paint? Oh yeah, sorry. Can you explain glazing or a way to texture? I'm just reading that out loud here. If you're newer to painting like that, what's that starting example, or explaining it to someone who's newer?
So glazing, and let's keep this camera up here, because I've got a good way to show it on the palette here. I have this kind of like urban camo going on, right? This winter urban camo scheme on my finger, really, right? Glazing is when it's called a filter. So the term that we discuss is filtering. Filtering, if you can imagine, if you know about like photography or anything like that, you can put a filter over your lens. Like in Instagram, if you take a picture, you can edit the picture and apply filters to your picture that will make it look colder by putting like a little bit of a blue tint to it, or warmer by putting a little bit of a yellowish orange tint to it. Those are filters. You take whatever the raw color of a thing is and you apply another very translucent color on top that affects the whole area, right? So the photograph is of me in this background with yellow lighting, the olive drab hoodie I've got on, my black hat, my skin tone, right? And then you were to put a blue filter over this, you'd start getting a lot of crazy colors because it's just a tinge of blue that would cool everything down and make it not look so yellow, right? But it would be all over everything. So it kind of puts you in a different environment, right? So when we say filtering, what we're talking about is the same thing. Is like I have this mishmash of color. Let's say I wanted to glaze a red over that, right? So I'll take like red oxide, put a filter over it that makes it feel red, or let the red influence it a little bit. Then what I have to do is thin the paint down. I have to dilute it because the paint by its very nature is intended to be opaque in most cases. We have some transparent paints and there are some specialty products that are not. But if I just go and take the red paint as it is out of the bottle and paint it over that, well, that's just painting, right? I lose everything underneath and it just becomes red. A filter allows me to still see, in this case, see the texture that I've created, right? This pattern may be what I like. I've just kind of daubed the color on there and I want to turn that red but keep the bright and dark kind of scratchiness of it. So I'll take the same brush, I'll load it up with water to where it has a lot of water in it, and then I'll get a little bit of the paint on my palette, right? And now the paint is much less opaque and it lets me put it over the top of that area and still get a little bit of red on it. I'll do a couple of layers here because that was pretty thin.
Yep.
Right?
But this is what you could do with it.
But then you can layer it up and turn that area more and more red by layering up this very, very thin, same paint, just diluted with more water, right? And 3 layers of it makes it to where now I have this reddish tint. Now, this is probably a bad example. I don't know why you'd ever do this, but you get the drift, right? Here was the original whites and grays. Here it is with a little bit of a red filter over the top of it. This could be for OSL, when we paint things where like the glow of a plasma gun on your Space Marine is red, and you want to have that red bounce onto the armor. This is how I would do that. I would take this red, thin it way down, and glaze it over the color of the armor so that it looks like, the light shining on it. Make sense? So that's a filter. The glazing term is taking a opaque paint and thinning it to be not opaque. That's turning it into glazing, where you put it over the top of it.
Nice.
Washes are also filters where they do a little bit of discoloration of the surface and then most of the pigment runs into a crevice to shade. That's also a filter, but we call that a wash because it moves around the surface of the model differently.
And do you use the transparency for easier glazing? Is that a good way to think about that? Because that's
you
what
can. Here's the thing with the transparents. They are all single pigment, very high intensity colors. So if you glaze with like blue transparent, it's going to turn the thing blue. So I typically use the transparents in situations where I want a lot of punch in the color that I'm glazing. So purple in the shadows. Very rarely do I use the transparents on highlights except for yellow, which I will use on the highlights for colors that I want to feel like they're more outside in sunlight. Way thinned down yellow transparent does wonders for that. And then purples, blues, browns, blacks, and shadows works really well. For things where I'm glazing in highlights and midtones, I typically like to use normal opaque paint because it has less of a punch when you thin it down. That's what we talked about a minute ago when glazing. As you thin the paint, it loses what we call its saturation. So it becomes less punchy of a color. So when I put it over it, I build it up in layers and I get to decide, when to stop because it's like, okay, that's not red enough. Okay, that's perfect. If I use the transparents, they're punchy. So I use them in situations where having a lot of color very quickly makes sense, and use the opaque paints where I want to build up and have a little bit more flexibility. Yeah, Mr. Blue. Yeah. Yeah, any paint will do that. As you dilute it, it'll start, because it's water-based, it'll start pooling because water will pull into droplets, even microscopically, and the pigment goes with it. And that's how you get water staining, right? So you'll get pigment that loads up around the edge of the circle of the droplet where it touches the model. And when the droplet, dries, you have a circle of pigment that you didn't know was there. That's how that happens. So yeah, you got to be careful with all that because it can cause that chalkiness, because layer after layer after layer of little bitty clumps of pigment are random in how they look. So sometimes it might work great, And the next time you do it, it's little islands of pigment that look like cloudy or textury and things like that, for sure.
Yeah, check out our. I was just posting up all the YouTube links, but yeah, Jordan also did a great video on our transparent, so definitely go check that out as well. Yeah, it's been a good week of glazing tips this week.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot. We glazed the skin tone on with the underpainting, right?
Yep. I'm actually working on that video right now.
Yeah, for people that might not have been here earlier in the week, the skin was all done with a single color glaze over purple, red, and bright yellow green.
Monday's VOD.
So this skin is this color.
Yeah.
That's it. It's basically that, but it's done over the top of, a purple, a red, and a bright yellow green underpaint.
Yep.
That's the 4 colors on the skin. That's all there is on the skin, period. Right? And these were not blended or anything. It was literally purple in the cheeks, red across the eyebrow and the top of the cheeks, and then the bright yellow green on the forehead, and then the one color of skin tone glaze over the top. So that's a really interesting method to go look at if you want to explore that. And Chris is going to have that pulled out into a nice consumable chunk for us here pretty soon. So yeah, I'm trying to use techniques that are not very, all in all on this model, we've used 6 colors so far.
Yeah, that's it's so funny how you'll think something is, you're just like, how the heck is it gonna get there? And then you start doing this kind of stuff with the glazing, and then you're like, oh, it doesn't look like a clown anymore.
Yeah.
So that's what Zazan was saying. Yeah, he started looking like a clown. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of it is getting confident in the way that painting has to progress. Is that sometimes it starts really sloppy looking, and I find a lot of joy in that, because the early stages of my painting can be messy. They can be freewheeling. I'm just slapping paint on the model. It's very fun. It's like finger painting. And then you get into the focus part where you start tightening it up and you put the details on it, and it turns it into something beautiful from something that was easy to get to. That's the way I look at it, because I'm a lazy painter. I don't want to spend a ton of detail time on every part of the model. I want to get to the chopping block and say, what are the quick things I can do to get me to the 75% mark, so that only 25% of the model is having to be that real focus, stick your tongue out, balance on your left foot, kind of get the details right part.
He used royal purples as in for the skin base.
Yeah.
And again, if you guys missed that, obviously we will have a good consumable chunk coming from that, but you can go check out the full process from start to finish. I believe it was on Monday.
Yeah, it was.
I believe it was Monday. Literally, the Monday VOD was start to finish that face, including the eyes as well.
Oh yeah, I guess we used more than 6 colors because I did the eyes.
We did. And you were kind of like in the middle, like, oh, should I do this? I'll do them now.
Yeah, it was fun because I was like exploring the way the model looked, and then found that, oh, the eyes are not as open as I thought they were. They're little squinty, beady eyes. And so I had to stop doing what I was doing and make sure that we painted the eyes, which was a pain.
I know, Drac. I've watched Jason paint so many models, and it's still magic. I was saying, they were saying I typed in every time the process looks a certain way, and then there's that one step that just kind of like blows your mind a little bit. That's how it happens for me, for sure. It's like, well, why would I use yellow ochre here?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
The rust. I use the rusty metal so often. I literally, on almost every time there's metal on my models, I do that just because it just comes out well. And I'm always like, I don't know how this is gonna look. And then you slap on that dry brush and you're like, dang, this is great.
Yeah, it's a lot about risk taking, but it's only a risk the first time you try it, right? And if it doesn't pan out, then you don't do that again. And that's how I find it. I'm not a professionally trained painter, right? I didn't like come up doing paid art or anything like that. I am the guy, just like you guys and gals, who really just enjoys painting models. and I've done it for over 45 years. And so for me, it's just been a lifelong passion that I wanted to be good at, because I'm the kind of person that wants to excel at everything I enjoy.
Yep.
Sometimes it's very frustrating because I'm not good at everything I enjoy. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way all the time. But on things where I can, I just explore. And I really love painting because it allows me to just try things out, knowing that there is nothing I'm doing right this minute that if it messes up is going to ruin this model. I can cover it all up. If I sneeze and blow a booger on the model, or, blows my brush around and knocks a texture onto the model I don't like, easy, I can fix that, right? I'm never at a point where what I'm doing is going to cause me a problem I can't repair. And so that gives me a nice sense of confidence to try all sorts of crazy stuff. There's been times where people in chat are like, what if you did it like this? And I'm like, I have no idea, let's try it. And we'll just grab them all and do it. Hell, Jordan reprimed some of his best models. Just on a whim.
Jordan loves the process too.
Jordan loves the process of exploring and finding paint the way I do, and that's great. I'm not crazy like Jordan. I don't repaint my models, but we'll give him that.
Oh, Awkwardish, reminder that Sunday at noon Central Adepticon tickets go on sale, and you can take a class from the legend. That is Jason himself live in Milwaukee. If you have the fastest fingers when the tickets go live.
That is true, and I forgot all about that. I have a class at Adepticon this year.
That's going to be something.
I have not done a class in person in a decade, I don't think.
It's been
close to a decade.
That's going to be... We'll capture that in some way.
Yeah.
We will capture that in some way, because that's a big moment.
Close to a decade. I'm doing it with the great team over at AMG. We're painting Crimson Dynamo from Marvel Crisis Protocol. One of my, I don't know why, I couldn't tell you a lot of his story, but it was always one of my favorite Iron Man bad guys growing up in the comics. So I was stoked when they came out with Crimson Dynamo.
Can you center up for me, Jason?
Yeah, sorry.
You're good.
So, so we'll be painting Crimson Dynamo. I will be showing you my traditional 3-color layering method for doing red armor. And so there'll be a little bit of, it won't be a non-metallic class, but it will be a class that focuses on material of armor having a little bit more shine, the same way we're painting the armor on Anthony L. Tigre, is it'll have some shine to it, but we're going to do it with 3 colors. Right, 3 colors and a highlight. So I'll be taking the colors that I use and showing you how I mix 3 colors into 5, so that you can do really, really simple workups on no matter what the material is. It'll be a lot of fun.
That will be fun.
Wow, that'd be awesome. Do you still have that poor Space Marine that has to weigh 10 pounds with the different paint trials on it? No, that's the funny thing.
The big purple one?
Oh, we have some. Oh, purple one? He's not a test model. I think they're asking about the test model where you go and you just slap more paint on it to try something, and then it gets so glommed up that it's like a ball. It's no longer a Space Marine. It's like a circle of paint.
You should see some of Jordan's texture trainers.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the model. What time is it? 3:39. Holy cow, time flies.
We're flying.
I'm getting close, so I'm really digging this.
Oh, this is coming out great.
Starting to look pretty good. Not mad at it. I'm using a lot of white blue.
European reseller. Which one?
PK Pro is our main European distributor. So always check with them. We also have others that you can find on our store locator, the FLGS link in chat, or just store locator at the top of the monumenthobbies.com website. But yeah, PK Pro is our main distributor in the EU. If they do not have something in stock, contact them. They'll make sure to get it on their next order. They place regular orders. We've got some big, exciting news hopefully coming out about the EU here in the remainder of this quarter, month, etc. So stay tuned on that too. I'm really excited to share with everybody what we're doing over there.
Welcome in, everybody who's just now joining. We're painting some black armor. Zambies, welcome in.
Sam.
Yeah. You're going to need some... it's going to definitely be a good time at Adepticon this year.
It's only one class, so that's the thing, right?
Man, that's the Whew, get those tickets.
They were like, "Hey, you want to paint a class? We got a time slot."
Oh, it's
And I was like,
epic.
what does it gotta be? I'm like, Adepticon's crazy for me. I could do a class. What are we gonna do? It's up to you. And I said, oh, well, let's just do something like this. And I'll do Marvel Crisis Protocol. And it'll be fun.
Hey, you monument, Jabe. One class for now. Hey, you guys get classes here every day.
Yeah. It'll wind up being, with the way that I talk and the way people are going to want to nab my time at the end of the class, it'll wind up being an 8-hour session with people just walking in from outside, asking questions, making it even longer, and we'll wind up like ordering pizza in, and they'll get mad and want to kick us out.
We will record it in one way, shape, or form. That is definitely something we will capture.
It'll be a lot of fun.
You won't miss it if you're not there.
Raw and untethered.
But
Sunday.
Not right away. You have to give me some time.
But I think it's a Friday night class too.
Oh man. Oh, here's a good question. I know you don't like repeating paints, but can you explain the difference when you choose bold titanium white versus heavy titanium white?
For me personally, heavy titanium white I like a lot for when I'm doing final highlights on metallic or non-metallic, because it just is such a great paint for going and giving me that dot of shine, like shiny polish stuff. Even on metallic paint, it works great. That and heavy warm white. When I'm doing golds, heavy warm white. When I'm doing steels, heavy titanium white, because it just stays where you put it. That extra thickness is so good for getting on the point of your brush and doing doot, when I want to do the gleam on an eye, doot, because it has such lower liquidity to it. It doesn't like pool out and become a bigger pool than I want. It's exactly where you put it. So it's a great thing for that final detail. It's also just great for edge highlighting and such, because it gives you such a good consistent flow, but titanium white does that as well. It was made with Ben and Matt's specific paint style of loaded brush, where they'll take and put let's say the Dark Sea Ben for Ben. He'll put that on the brush and then just put the tip in the heavy white. And then when you paint with it, you wind up with a streak. Here, I'll do it real quick. I'll do it with the blue and the Payne's gray that I got going on here. Right? So the idea is that you get a lot of a darker color in your brush. Can you zoom in for me?
Yep.
You get a lot of a darker color in your brush, and then you go in and just load the tip of the brush with a spot of a brighter color, right? Then when you go to do your paint stripe, right, you get that bright color, and then as you push down, you immediately start getting a blend of it with the color beneath it. And so it lets you do a neat speck highlight, right? And then you can come in and very nicely blend those, because you've got that remnant of it. It doesn't mix on the brush. It lets you play with mixing it on the surface, right?
Interesting.
So it's a pretty advanced brushing technique, but you can do layering with it. You can do all sorts of really cool stuff. And the heavier the paint is on the tip, the better it is. The more liquid it is, that paint draws up into the other color and blends in the brush.
That's a great example of explaining that. You could do that with so many different things too.
Yeah. Yeah, I've only ever really used it as a way to get really cool highlights on things like metal belts, areas that are really small that I need to get a blended highlight on. It works great for that. I don't typically use it for larger areas, only because standard layering for me works better. But those guys do magic with it. It's incredible to watch them work.
We've got first time chat. X-Man 8784. Kind of on the glazing topic, what colors do you use for underneath a warm flesh for dwarves in snow setting for Votan? I mean, this one would be actually, I would think, be pretty good too.
Yeah, I guess it depends, right? Are you wanting the skin
like you want to be more
cold?
Yeah, like more of a cold skin.
Do you want it to look like warm in a cold setting? The great thing with flesh tones is there's no rule. What do you want to do? And then go for it. I'm a big fan of our advanced flesh as a base. Dark flesh, if you want darker skin tone ultimately, and then advanced flesh over the top, and then move into like shadow flesh or something. Gives you a great basis to do anything you want to do, whether it's, dwarves like you're talking about, or, elf flesh or whatever. It just gives you a nice warm undertone because it has more of a golden skin, bronzed skin. You can layer pale over the top and it still makes it seem alive.
Yeah, Zambi was saying she likes the blue black as an undertone for a skin color. Yep.
It can be great. Yeah, I use a lot of purples, and they can look very cold, but blue black is great. Payne's gray that I've used a lot on this armor is another really good one.
Payne's gray, I do like that for skin tones underneath.
Payne's gray is fantastic for all sorts of stuff. Being able to use it as a shadow color for skin is fantastic. So you can see how much darker my skin looks on the face now that I have the armor done, right? You'd have to compare the pictures side by side to see the feel because it's not any darker. But as soon as I start putting something that looks and reads like white, which is white blue does, which is funny because it's nowhere near white, right? If I bring white into the screen, everything looks darker, right?
Yeah.
But the white blue is our fake white for this particular setup because it's the brightest thing on the model, right? Even brighter than the ivory I used on the inside of the eyes. And so now the skin on his face looks even darker than it did before. So this is why, to that question at the beginning of the stream where we talked about, how would I brighten the face up? Well, now I will use a lot brighter color at the top of the cheeks, right? And across the shine of the forehead on this side, probably side of the nose and laugh line maybe, right? A little bit, maybe a dot of it over here on this cheek, right? Because now the skin looks too dark in the composition because the armor is going to be pretty bright. Now, I haven't done the wash on the armor yet, so it'll darken down a little bit, but...
Panic Bomb. Payne's gray is so good it needs to be a wash.
And we got it. Yeah, the Payne's gray wash I think people are going to fall in love with. It's too good. Too good.
Yeah, I am excited for that one. Ricker says, I randomly found a bottle of Bold Titanium White at my FLGS in here in Southeast. I've been talking it up. Oh, sorry, 1 second. I've been talking it up around and slowly seeing stores trickle other colors in. What's the magic word for customers that sales recommend to push the FLGS buyers to get a full rack? We're the best. That's awesome.
Depending on where you're at. Are you here in the States?
I believe so, yes. Yep.
A lot of the retailers like the fact that we're also in the States. And so you're going to get your orders filled very quickly. You don't have to wait on what's in and out of stock. It allows them to, from a business perspective, really rely on us more as a money-making partner for them. Because that's really what it all comes down to. A lot of times people are like, yeah, I'd really like to buy that. Well, we can't get it. Yeah, and that causes a problem. But with us, they don't really have that issue. It's going to be something that they can rely on, being in stock, getting the bulk of their orders filled all the time. So that's the kind of language that really works. But we have dealers talk to other dealers. We don't shy away from it. We have a tremendous network dealership or that is ready at all times to go to bat for us. When we go to the trade show in our industry is called Gamma. And when we go to Gamma, it's funny, we should just have the booth there, and then some of our dealers come by and they basically tell the other dealers, hey, do you like printing money? Then buy this stuff.
Yeah. Do you like printing money? Here you go.
I've adopted it as my kind of own, kind of half-hearted joke mentality because I've heard so many people use that as like, yeah, literally just bring it in. If you have people in your community that paint and who like painting, bring in Procryl. They will love it. And we've got ways that make it easy. They can bring in some sets and try them out with their community and see if it works well for their crowd. We've had huge stores that have primarily been one of our competitors as their main range dump that competitor and bring us in as their biggest range. So we're very proud of that.
So where are we at on this black armor, Jason?
Well, I'm just kind of doing a little bit too much right now, I think. I'm going to do a wash, so a lot of what I'm doing right now won't survive the wash. But I'm setting up the chest plate there with some dings and weathering so that when I put the wash on it, it'll guide me back to where I need to be. I like kind of figuring that out right now. So just doing a couple of little scritches. When I put the wash on, it'll darken this up a whole lot, and might lose some of it, but it'll let me give me a guideline at least for where to come back to and re-highlight these. This is the part I love. I gripe about it, so people will laugh, right? Because I gripe about the getting stuck in the details part of the model, because it becomes the part that can suck the soul out of you, right? The final 10 to 20% of the model takes 80% of your time. But I do love it because it's the part that really makes the model come alive, right? It's the part that shows the model for what it is, lets you get some really, really cool detailing done. Just
on the shoulder pad, here's one from Ave. On the shoulder pad, you've got a harder contrast on one side of the shine than the other, both on the vertical stripe and the horizontal one. What's the thought process behind which side you would use the harder contrast and which should be more gradual?
Here, I've just kind of arbitrarily, because I don't really have a light source in this scene that I've set. So on surfaces where you're injecting like on a cylinder, right? I basically make a line of shine that goes down the cylinder, and then I pick one side or the other. And most times it's as simple as saying which side faces up, right? On this one, I pick the inside of both of these, so as if the light source is hitting like this, that the brighter reflection will be towards the light source. So if the light source is up here, which is kind of how all this is right now, but I don't have a very intense light going on. So I'm just kind of doing it. That's my thought process right now. A lot of times I'll fine tune that as we go, but you'll see I'm doing that on all of these. They're all cylinders or spheroids, as you go down the arm. And so you've got to pick. And I just lean towards the brightness towards my light source, as you should. Unless there's something else in the scene that would make a light, like a torch or something like that, then that might change up what I'm doing. And a lot of times I'll forego realism to get the model in the position that it's in to look cool. But a lot of times I do want to make sure that it kind of conforms with what the brain and the eye think they would see if this existed in reality in front of them. That's always a thing for me, is I don't want to go so far. I don't want to bend the rules so much that it is not believable at all, even though we're painting, fantasy miniatures. Fantasy and sci-fi give us a lot of leeway to do some cool things that, defy reality. But they need to be anchored in something that the eye and brain understand, or you lose the audience. They're just not going to go. It's why so many people can't watch cartoons, because cartoons don't bring enough reality in some cases to keep people interested. Like Jen can't watch cartoons at all because of that. They're just not realistic enough for her. I'm somewhere in between. I love being able to bend the rules, do cool stuff, make fun visuals, but then I always come back to, but the light wouldn't be over there. It wouldn't shine that way. You've got too much light there, blah, 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 blah. So sometimes I do get lost in the details like that.
If you guys are just now tuning in, we're almost wrapping up for the day. We're just doing some more scritches on this black armor.
Liking the shine on the breastplate.
Yep. Looking good.
Like I said, I'm not going over the top with the shine at all. I'm thinking more in terms of, your stainless steel refrigerator than your polished mirror finish, only because of 40K. And remember, I've got a lot of gold. So we're doing black armor right now so that we can go back and do all the non-metallic gold. This whole shoulder plate is going to be non-metallic gold. All of this gorget and the stripe down the center of his breastplate. Plus, the angel on the side will be white and red, but the trim around here will all be in gold. So I've got a lot of gold and or bronze, depending on how I decide it's going to look at the end, to do. And so I have to be thinking, like with the face, where is this black armor going to lie when I do the gold non-metallic, which the gold I will do as a brighter, more polished metal than the armor itself, because the armor will be dumped back down to black with the black wash over the top like we've talked about. There's still some stuff to do, but right now it's starting to look like almost a silver plate mail. Swifter Bear, awesome. What did you say about Frosted Flakes? I like Frosted Flakes, but I don't put Frosted Flakes in the fridge. What? Mine sit in a nice clear tote next to the refrigerator where the cold milk is, and then it's Frosted Flakes, usually for dinner. Jen and I have started doing cereal for dinner quite often. He's got fridge armor, but you don't put Tony the Tiger in the fridge? Well, he can go in the fridge. Do I want a Warcry rematch at Adepticon? Not if I have to paint another warband. I have so much to do. I would love to play with you again. That would be awesome. That was such a fun game. We tied. It was so fun and disheartening at the same time. Then I got to read rules. Maybe. I'll give you a solid maybe, Zam. A solid maybe. X-Man, thank you. You guys are awesome. Cereal for dinner is amazing. It's so good, and it makes me feel so alive. Only if it makes me feel like when I first left home as a teenager, right? Before becoming a young man in my 20s and thinking that I had the world was mine to control, and if I wanted to eat cereal for dinner, I could. And Jen and I look at each other and we go, we're grown-ass adults. We can do what we want. And that's exactly the way I thought back then. It was awesome. So cereal for dinner is tops on our list. We have 3 cereals right now. We have it used to be called Super Sugar Crisp. It's like an oat, like a puffed oat cereal that is like lightly honeyed. And then we have Frosted Flakes, and then we have all of these are the knockoff brand. They're not the real brand. They are the legally distinct Antonio El Tigre version of these cereals. And the last one is the Crunch Berries. Captain Crunch. The one with the frog. I don't know, maybe. They come in big body bags. Like they're literally like huge bags at the grocery store. Bulk. Sugar Snaps.
Did you say body bags?
Well, it's like body pillow kind of a thing. They come in body bags. I eat my cereal out of a body bag. I feel like the guitar rips in right there. Everybody, thank you for hanging out with us again. As always, love having you around here. For those of you maybe new, remember we stream Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Mountain Standard Time is that time zone nobody knows exists, but that's where Phoenix, Arizona is, so we live there. 2 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. We'd love to see you back. Hit that follow button on the stream over here on Twitch, or if you're over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button to get alerts when we go live. All of the content we create here will be on the live tab over in our YouTube channel, so you can pick up and rewatch parts of the show you missed. The wonderful Chris, the man behind the scenes, the wizard behind the curtain, will be constantly creating new content snippets out of these that you can catch those clips on the YouTube as well. So any of the tutorials you saw that you missed will be in bite-sized content chunks starting this next week. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yep.
So thank you guys and gals so much for hanging out with us. Remember, hit all the links that Chris put up in chat there, monumenthobbies.com, where you can pick up your own Pro Acrylic, Pro Series brushes, all the stuff you see me using on stream. We love the support. Thank you so much for getting us over the last 8 years where we are today. It's amazing. Been an amazing journey. Glad to have you guys and gals along with us. Yep. Also, check out the FLGS link where you can find a local store close to you where you can support. Please do support your local stores. They do all the heavy lifting. They create the spaces and the faces that make the hobby great. So support them when you can. And then our Discord, where we have, 5,300-ish so crazy artists just like you guys.
I think it's like near 5,300, I believe.
That are all glazing maniacs So painters of all levels, people that are just starting, people that are afraid to start but are getting closer, people that have been painting for a bajillion years. It's a fantastic community where you can come in, make friends, get inspired, ask questions, and get amazing answers. I'm surprised. I don't really have to answer much in our Discord anymore. I read them all, but the community does such a fantastic job of helping people out. I love to see it. So come join us there. It'd be great to see you. And then stick around. Chris is going to find somebody to raid, take this hobby off into the evening so you can have some more fun and on Thursday night. And we'll be back tomorrow, 2 p.m. See you before we send you off for the weekend.
Take it easy.
Have a wonderful night. Catch you on the flip side.